Good morning, boys and girls. It's time for science, or literature, sorry. So what I want you to do is I want you to pull out your literature page, your very first literature page. It's this one right here. You see, it's literature 1, just like the title of this video. We're going to go over the rudiments of literature. What do we have literature for? Why did God give us literature? Let's read the first verse, or let's read the definition of literature, because we want to know exactly what literature means first. We always go to the definition of the word. And this year, we're going to be doing a lot of defining words, and we're going to find out exactly what words mean. So, what dictionary do we use? We use our 1828. Let me grab it. We're going to use our 1828 dictionary. Now, I have mine on my phone. In class, we'll be able to use this, okay? But guess what? On your paper, I have the definition written for you. So let's read that. Literature, it's a noun. Now, in grammar, we're going to learn parts of speech. This is a noun, okay? A noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. We'll go over that more. But it's a noun. It means learning or acquaintance with letters. Acquaintance means a knowledge of letters or books. Literature comprehends, that means it has all this included, a knowledge of the ancient languages, denominated classical history, grammar, rhetoric, logic, geography, etc., as well as the sciences. A knowledge of the world and good breeding give luster to literature, right? So a knowledge of the world and good breeding, that means good understanding, gives luster to literature. How many of you would like to read a book by someone who'd only been in Reedley for his entire life? Maybe he could write a good book, but he would have to know things about science. He'd have to know things about history. He'd have to know things about Reedley. He'd have to know things about the world. What if there was a person who wrote a book, who only lived in Reedley, didn't know anything outside of Reedley, knew no science, no geography, right? Because if you live in Reedley, do you know what an ocean is? Of course not. You've never seen an ocean. How are you going to write a good book? So when someone writes literature, literature comprehends or is inclusive of all of those things. So when we read literature, we're going to see information on languages, history, things with grammar, like we're going to learn, geography. Logic is how to think, right? Logic is that pan is hot. If I touch that pan, I'm going to get burned. That's logic, right? Learning to think. And you're going to learn logic as you get older as well. So we're going to go to the biblical origin. Where did literature come from? Now remember, with every single subject, because we're going to do this with math, we're going to do this with science, Mr. Pluming's going to do it with you with literature. Every single subject has a place it came from. How many of you can guess where it came from? Right? Where do you think it came from? And then every subject has a purpose. The reason why God gave us, oh, did I just give you the answer where it came from? Oh, well. Well, where it came, or its purpose. Why did God give us literature? Do you think God gives us stuff for no reason? I don't think so. Everything God gives us has a purpose. Just like here in school, everything we give you for work has a purpose. Everything we have you do, there's a reason for it. And then also, you'll see on the back of your page, there's biblical principles, okay? So with biblical principles is what do we learn from that subject? Now, let's go to biblical origin. So this is your first part of your page, biblical origin. Origin means the source or where it comes from. So for example, where is your origin? Isaias, where did you come from? Daniela, where did you come from? Right? Samuelito Ramirez, where did you come from? And all of you are going to say, my mom and dad. That's right, that was your origin, okay? You know how sometimes you can find something like, let's look at this pen. This pen, it says, here it says something interesting. It says, what does it say? See if you can read that. It says USA. Guess where this pen came from? The USA. Other things say made in China. That's their origin, where they came from. Okay? So when we deal with origin, it's where something comes from. So let's read Daniel chapter 1, verse 17. It says, as for these 4 children, God gave them what? Knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. Who gave them the knowledge? Now notice, look up at the definition of literature one more time. What is in there? It is what? Knowledge, learning. And here it says God gave knowledge So we can say, where does knowledge come from? So right here, I want you to write the idea. What idea do we get from here? If it says God gave them knowledge, so you could write something like, knowledge comes from God. Okay? So you're going to give me your own idea. You've done these before, so you should be familiar with it. So you might want to say God, or knowledge comes from God, or we get knowledge from God, or God is the one who gives knowledge. There's lots of ways you can write it, but write down your own idea about that verse. Now let's go on to the next one. 2 Chronicles 1:10-12. Give me now wisdom and knowledge. Right? Here is one of the kings praying to who? Oh, this is actually Solomon praying to God. Remember, God came to Solomon and said, Solomon, ask me for anything you want. You can ask me for riches. You can ask me for the victory over your enemies. You can ask me for anything you want. I'll give you whatever you want. Oh my goodness. Boys and girls, if someone came to you and said, Samuel Plumley, I'm going to give you whatever you want. Jasmine, I'm going to give you anything you want in the whole world. Ask me and I'll do it. Let's say the richest man in the world came. What would you ask for? A big house. Give me this, give me that. Well, imagine if God, the creator of the universe, came to you and said, I'll give you whatever you want. What are you going to ask for? Adrian, what would you ask for? Oh my goodness, that's a big responsibility. But notice Solomon's heart. Notice what he asks for. He says, give me now what? He says, give me now wisdom and knowledge. That blows my mind, right? He doesn't ask for tons of money. He doesn't ask for all kinds of stuff. He doesn't even ask for victory over his enemies. And guess what? Back then, the enemies were really mean. They'd come in and they'd do a lot of damage, make everybody slaves, destroy the village, or destroy the city. They would do horrible stuff. He didn't even ask for the victory over his enemies. He said, God, give me wisdom and knowledge that I may go out and come in before these people. He said, give me knowledge so I can lead the people. Because who can judge your people? Because there's so many people. He said, God, there's so many people in Israel that I'm king of. How can I rule over them? I need wisdom. And you know what? Look at what it says there. It says, wisdom and knowledge is granted unto thee. What did God give Solomon? He gave him wisdom and knowledge. Because did Solomon have wisdom and knowledge? No. Because where does wisdom and knowledge come from? Where does literature come from? Literature comes from, everybody say it, it comes from God. The origin of all wisdom, their origin, the beginning of all learning comes from God. So right there, you can write whatever you want. So you can write your own idea. So God gives wisdom and knowledge, or wisdom and knowledge come from God. Or you could also say something like, we need to ask God to give us wisdom and knowledge. Isn't that an idea we get from that verse? Because God didn't say, Solomon, ask me for wisdom and knowledge, and I'll give it to you. Right? He said, Solomon, what do you want? Now in Proverbs later on, it does tell us at times, it says, choose wisdom, ask for wisdom, seek for wisdom. Why does Proverbs tell us that? Because wisdom comes from God. The origin of wisdom, the origin of learning is from God. See, it says literature is the first definition for literature is learning. Through your book, Mary Jones and Her Bible, you know what? You're going to learn. You're going to learn a love for God. You're going to learn a love for family. You're going to learn a love for nature. You're going to learn a love for God's individuality of others. You're going to learn a love for liberty. You're going to learn how to recognize the character, the setting, the plot, all that kind of fun stuff. Your learning is going to grow. We're going to learn about whales. Not whales as in the thing that shoots water out, but the country whales, right? In England. In fact, you're going to do a map on that tomorrow. So be ready for that. But you're going to learn all that kind of stuff. Literature is learning. It's so wonderful. And all learning comes from God. Now, let me finish the story about Solomon. What happened with Solomon was, he said, God, I want wisdom and understanding. And God goes, you have it, Solomon. I am giving you exactly what you asked for. He said, but not only am I giving you wisdom and knowledge, I am also giving you riches. And in fact, he said, not only are you going to be wise and smart, in fact, you're going to be the smartest man who ever lived. There's never, ever going to be someone as smart as Solomon. Solomon is the wisest man who was ever alive. And not only that, he said, you're going to be rich as well. He said, not only are you going to be rich, but I'm also going to give you peace from your enemies. Do you know Solomon didn't have to fight any wars while he was king? Remember David, he was fighting all the time. Solomon's children were fighting all the time. All the kings were fighting with everybody. Solomon never had to fight anybody because he asked God for wisdom. God gave him wisdom, but then God also gave him the things he didn't ask for, riches and safety. Oh my goodness. If that doesn't make you think, I need to ask God for wisdom, then I don't know what will. Every day we need to be saying, God, we need wisdom from you. Isn't that true? Okay. So where does wisdom come from? It comes from God. Now let's go to biblical purpose. 1 Corinthians 15:34. Some have not the knowledge of God. I speak this to your shame. So see here Paul is saying some people don't have a knowledge of God. So what's one of the purposes of literature? It's so that we can know who? Come on, Jasmine, tell me. We can know God. Daniela, did you get it? We can know God. The purpose of literature is to know God. Through our literature books, you're going to know God. Through the reading assignment books that I gave you for your independent reading, you're going to get to know God through those. Okay? That's the purpose of literature. So right here, one of the purposes is what? So that we can know God. So you can write, I have literature to know God. Or you can write something like, the purpose of literature is to know God. Or, we need to know God through literature. You can write what you want, okay? And I'll check them. Let's look at Philippians 1:3-8. I count all things but loss for the excellency of the knowledge of Christ. What again? Knowledge of who? Now it talked about knowledge of God in the first one. The next one is knowledge of Christ, which is Jesus. So it's knowledge of God, but then it's also knowledge of Jesus, isn't it? All right? My Lord liveth shall be meet. Oops. There's a typo there. I messed up, boys and girls. This page is messed up. So this one, don't list Christ Jesus my Lord. So where it says liveth, from here on down, just cross this and all this out and just deal with this one. So it's a knowledge of God and it's a knowledge of Christ, okay? So we can know Jesus. You could write that. So we can know Jesus. The purpose of literature is so that we can know Jesus. Let's go to the back of our page. It says in Timothy to come to the knowledge of truth. That's interesting, right? So that we can know what? Literature teaches us to know what? Okay, Samuel Ramirez. Literature teaches us to know what? Truth. What is truth? The purpose of literature is to learn truth. Truth is things that are not lies. So here, you can write, so that we are not deceived. So we don't believe a lie. We know what is true, right? There's a lot of answers you can put. All right there. A lot of ideas you can write. So just write me one idea, one sentence. Now, notice the next, Hosea 4:6. It says, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge because thou hast rejected knowledge. People are destroyed because they don't have knowledge. If you didn't know that the street was very dangerous and you ran into the street and got atropellado, hit by a car, what's going to happen to you? You're probably going to die. You're going to be destroyed because you did not know that the road was dangerous. Right? Or how about if there's a glass of wonderful looking water and it's hot, but you didn't know that that water had poison in it. And you're running around at pee. I don't know why we'd have a glass of poison water here. We don't do that. But let's just say, for example, some person left a bottle of water and you're running after pee and you're hot and you're sweating and you're thirsty and you see that bottle of water. Ooh, that bottle of water looks good. You know it's going to quench your thirst. You know it's going to be refreshing. You know the feeling of that cool water as it touches your tongue and flows down your throat. Right? And you pick it up and you drink it. Oh man, it tastes good. It feels good. But then once it hits your belly and that poison starts working. You ever seen movies where people get poisoned? They're like, they fall on the ground and they're screaming, in pain. They're destroyed because they didn't know. But if you know that that water's poison, I don't care how hot you are and how thirsty you are, you think you're going to drink that water? Of course not. Because you have knowledge. So knowledge saves you from being destroyed, from being hurt. So that could be a principle there. You know, literature teaches us how to be protected. So literature, it protects us. It keeps us safe. It helps us not to do dangerous things. That's one of the purposes of literature, to give you knowledge to protect you, right? Doesn't the Bible give us instructions? The Bible says, honor your father and mother, because this is the first commandment with promise, that you may live long on the earth. Oh my goodness. Do you want to have and it may be well with you. Ephesians says, if you obey your mom and dad, you're going to have a long life, but you're also going to have a good life. Who wants to have a long, bad life? Right? I don't want to have a long, bad life. I want to have a long, good life. Don't you want a long, good life? And that's why we have knowledge. Now remember, knowledge is not so we can be like, oh, I am so smart. I am so great. Knowledge is so that we can do what? It's so that we can know God. It's so we can know Jesus. It's so we can know the truth, and it's so we can be protected. Those are some purposes of literature, and there's some others. Let's finish up with biblical principles real fast, okay? And my people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways as we walk in his paths. Biblical principles teach us his ways, the ways we're supposed to walk. Notice it says it will teach us his ways. One of the principles is that we are being taught his ways. Okay? So write your idea there. 2 Timothy, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Study. Boys and girls, you're in school right now. Your job and your responsibility before the Lord is to do what? Is to study, is to work hard. And one of the principles we can learn from literature is the principle of diligence and study. You know, study is working hard. It's not being lazy. It's when I give you your next assignment, you're actually going to do this on your own. You're going to study. All right? So that's the origin, the purpose, and some principles we can learn. One of the principles we learn is that we have to be taught. Okay? Knowledge has to be taught by God, but knowledge also can be taught by your teachers. But it's God. Even though I get up here and I teach you, I could be the greatest teacher in the world. But you know what? If God doesn't give you that wisdom, then you don't learn. It's God who learns. That's why you need to pray before class and ask God to help you. And then also the principle of studying, being diligent, working hard. Now, what I want you to do on your own, I want you to read Philippians 4:8 and write down the 7 things that we're supposed to think on. It says, think on these things. What 7 things are in Philippians 4:8? So I want you to write down those 7 things on these lines. All right? This paper, you're going to be turning it in on Friday. All right? So if you have any questions, give me a call, boys and girls. Remember, literature is learning. Learning comes from God so that we can know him, so we can know Jesus, so we can know the truth and be protected. And from that, we learn how to study. We learn how to learn God's ways. All right? Literature is so important. And you guys are going to love Mary Jones and her Bible. We're going to get into that tomorrow. We'll do the author study tomorrow. All right. We'll see you later. Bye.